Thanks, guys. In this week's ATV interview, we're sitting down with the director of the Persistent Universe, Mr. Tony Zurovec. Tony, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Now, we've gained a lot of new followers, a lot of new citizens since the last time you were on camera here. So why don't you start by introducing yourself to the community and tell them a little bit about what you do.
My name is Tony Zurovec. I'm the director of Persistent Universe, and that entails a number of different responsibilities. We do everything from guiding the development at the high level of what I'd call the peaceful AI. It's the AI that's going to drive all of the characters in the various landing zones that you're going to see throughout, all of these different environments. The non-combat oriented AI. It's also involves the creation of all of these different areas that you're going to be visiting within the Persistent Universe. We've already put out there Area 18, which is the first of those. Mm-hmm. There's a whole slew of other ones that are coming down the pike and that you'll be seeing soon. We'll get into a little bit of detail on some of those later in this conversation. It involves a whole lot of work with regards to everything from shopping interfaces to how you're actually going to transition from server to server, the whole back-end infrastructure for the networking, and a variety of other things.
Sounds like most of what Star Citizen is as opposed to Squadron 42?
Yeah, Squadron 42 in general is a very specific, experience. And if you play through it, there will be some variability, but by and large, different players will have very similar experiences as they traverse through the game. Whereas the Persistent Universe is intended to be a completely open-ended environment where you completely dictate your own path. Are you going to be a mercenary? Are you going to be a pirate? Are you going to be, a protector, of the weak and vulnerable? Are you going to be a miner? The sky is completely wide open in terms of not only what you do, but how effective you are at it, whether you recruit other players to your cause to assist, and all these types of things.
Gotcha. Now, for a long time, we just launched the social module. For a long time, we talked about the social module was going to be inviting people back to your hangars. When the social module actually arrived, it turned out to be so much more than that. Can you tell us a little bit about why that change was made?
Yeah, that was actually one of the later changes that I made, and there were a couple of reasons for it. One was at the time, just for technical reasons, the code base had been split into a game dev and a 1.2.0 version, and so it was very difficult to get back all of the pieces of the puzzle that we needed to basically do the shared hangars at that point in time. As of right now, it would actually be much more straightforward. We're back, we're reintegrated, that's no longer an issue, but that kind of goes back to the primary reason why I found Area 18 way more interesting as an initial release of the social module was that the mechanism by which you access it is the same for all the players. So when I go to my hangar, I'm in my own little environment. I then go to Area 18 and I'm automatically shunted into a common area with all of these other players. That's dramatically different from me landing in my single player hangar and I invite you over and now it's just the two of us. And unless I specifically invite someone else and maybe they accept my invitation and maybe they don't, then maybe we've got a third guy. And I do the same thing and maybe we've got a fourth guy. That's much slower pace. You don't tend to meet people you don't already know. And so it just struck me that it would be much more interesting to a much larger swath of the community to basically put them in close proximity via passive means. So all they needed to do was go to Area 18 and they were going to automatically be combined with other players. This will actually touch upon some of the enhancements that we've got to the very next milestone, the so-called 2.0 milestone, which will introduce the Million Mile High Club. We've got some specific enhancements planned for that release that will make going to Area 18 that much more interesting versus what it has been in the past.
Okay. Since you brought it up, the Million Mile High Club. We're going to talk with Mark Skelton a little bit later about it. But what can you give us kind of a top level overview of what the Million Mile High Club is supposed to achieve?
Yeah, the Million Mile High Club is basically a private, meeting community area that was purchased by a number of players in the past, and so we're now delivering, upon the promise, to those players. And what it is the owners of those areas have the ability to invite other individual players or entire clans to these areas. It resembles kind of a combination between a sports bar and an entertainment lounge. We've decked them out with a blend between it kind of blends visually technology with traditional wood finishes, so it's got kind of a high-end technological look to it. They're filled with aquariums, monitors. You have your own private bartender, you've got your own private doorman, so it's really a way to allow players to set up their own personal meeting area to discuss whatever they want, and eventually once the main game is online, this is a great area for people in a given guild or clan to basically head to find other players that are looking, that they know that they've interacted with before that haven't already gone out into space and gone to a different planet or a different system, etc. It's like these guys are literally waiting for other members of that clan to arrive, and then they basically join up and head off, and as opposed to having to do all of this communication through a typical chat-based interface and hope that you're on the same server and all that type of stuff. There's actually going to be a lot more to it than that, in terms of you'll eventually be able to deck out the Million Mile High Club with all of the trophies that you win, from various competitions, with the souvenirs that you purchase from different landing zones that you visit, with pictures that you'll be able to eventually purchase, on the walls. You'll be able to customize, the artwork, things of that sort, type.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Whether at some point down the line we'd be able to customize our Million Mile High Club so that mine doesn't look like yours, doesn't look like Ben's or whatnot.
Yeah, and that's actually something that the same interface by which you'll be customizing that will also be extended over into your hangar, and that will wind up hitting on the second iteration of the shopping. We'll start to get into the ability to buy things and actually route them to places other than on your person, so that you can buy a small trophy that you find, from a small vendor in the bazaar area on Nix, and route it back to your Million Mile High Club or to your ship or to your hangar, somewhere other than on your physical person.
So the Million Mile High Club is cool, and I understand that's coming in 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
What else does 2.0 bring as far as the social module planet side aspect?
The 2.0 the 2.0 release will be the first one to where you can actually formally establish a party, and this is important for a number of reasons. Once you're obviously out undertaking missions, then it's got very obvious benefits, but it's got more subtle advantages in terms of when you are in your hangar and you transition to Area 18. Now we will no longer just select a random server according to how many players are there and shunt you to that. Now it will give precedence towards trying to push you into the same instance where your other party members are. And this is something that we're going to be utilizing throughout the game, in terms of there's going to be a hierarchy of things in terms of what my capabilities are versus other players on that server, in terms of whether I am I'm in a party with somebody that's on a particular server, or whether I've got them as maybe not a party member, but they're a friend, they're someone that I actually know. These are all things that will be taken into account when you go to an area where we may have 2 or 4 or 10 or 20 different servers representing different instances of that area. But what would be most interesting to you is to be pushed into a version of that area where there are actually people that and you've got a history with. It also adds some back-end infrastructure in this 2.0 version that we're exploiting to allow us to create the Million Mile High Club. That's going to make it much easier for us to then link other landing zones and stuff into the game in the future. It's all been very abstracted now at a high level, to where the difficulty, for example, of adding Nix and having players, and having the server spawn up versions of Nix and allowing players to shunt into that, automatically according to, whether they're a party member with someone or something else. It's now getting to the point to where that's very straightforward to do.
Gotcha. Would that extend to things like I don't know, friends list. Is there anything like an enemies list or folks you specifically don't want to play with?
Yeah, but less so. It's more for, at least the current thinking for that is you would certainly be able to, exclude people from being able to talk to you and things of that sort. We're not yet thinking that we'd want to. Prevent you from going to a particular server simply because this player is actually on there. One other really interesting thing about version 2.0 is that it's going to add the ability, what we call gem routing. And basically, gem, the generic instance manager, is the service that sits in the background, and it keeps track of all of the different instances that are instantiated across the entire universe. It also keeps track of which players are allocated to which instance. And it controls when a player wants to move from one instance to another, exactly which one he's routed to. And so one of the enhancements that we're going to be making available in version 2.0 is going to be the ability so that when you use an elevator, it will show you your destination, but it will also show you the different instances within which you have other party members or friends, so that you can select which one you want to go into. So when you go into your hangar, now you'll be able to just select, I want to go to Area 18, throw me, wherever you want to, do the best fit. But you can also see, well, you have 3 party members on this instance, and you have 6 friends on this instance, and you have 14 friends on this instance. Which one would you actually prefer to go to? And the one with only 6 friends might be more interesting because you're trying to get that guy to come over to your party, but he's not responding, etc., or whatever the case may be.
I'm not that interesting. I don't have that many friends. So 2.0 sounds great. Looking ahead, what's next?
The next big one on our side after the Million Mile High Club, 2.0 and all of that, is really going to be the shopping milestone. And that's the one that it is for the first time going to give you the ability to start customizing your character. You'll do that via Kasaba Outlet, which is one of the stores that's in Area 18 right now, but it's been closed off. You will have the ability to go into that store. There will be a variety of different types of clothing, scattered about that shop, shirts, pants, jackets, hats, shoes, things of that sort. You'll be able to utilize a currency. There's still some debate over exactly, what we're going to do with, what type of currency and all that. Yeah. And you'll be able to purchase these things to customize your character how you see fit. This will also be the first test of the true persistence system. There is persistence of a sort within the game right now, but whether it's on the platform, the login side, or whether it's in terms of how you customize your ship, there are, for a variety of different reasons, these are not the long-term solutions for the overall game. What we've been focused on, for a while now is basically building out the back-end functionality and services and database, abstraction layers and all that type of stuff to allow us to really, handle persistence in the proper way for a large, massively multiplayer, game like this. And so this will be the first small test of that system, is that those pieces of clothing will actually, all of those clothing transactions will be getting executed via the server. The changes to your inventory will not be stored locally. They will not be stored over and over, in a web database, on Turbulent side. They'll actually be getting stored in the Persistent Universe, database. One other thing that's going to allow you to customize your character to a bit farther degree will be right now with the initial release of the social module. We just put in a shortcut key so that you could hit F6 to change the armor on your character, and that was really a very last minute thing that we added just because we didn't want everyone to look the exact same. And so now we've kind of built that out a little bit to where you'll be able to go to a particular usable in your hangar, and you'll be able to utilize it, and at that point you can see your character, and you can either select standard civilian clothing, which is what you would choose if you wanted to go up and basically access Kasaba and start changing your t-shirt and your pants and stuff like that. You can also select any of the 6 suits of armor that we're giving you access to right now. Obviously that will be restricted according to which ones you own, for the final game. We want to also allow the ability to, for you to modify your skin tone, your face, in your hair. It's not yet clear how many of those will actually make their way into that 2.1 shopping milestone, but if whatever doesn't hit there will show up shortly thereafter. But that's the short-term intent, is allow you to modify those aspects of your personal appearance, and also the clothing that you're actually wearing.
Now, when we dropped the social module, one of the things that surprised a lot of folks is we gave them a sneak peek of the upcoming Nix-Levski landing zone, and that blew lots of people away. It was a great look at what was coming next. Is there anything more you can tell us about Nix?
Yeah, Nix will likely show up in the milestone immediately after shopping. It's interesting in that Nix has actually been largely done for quite a while. There was one particular area, this bazaar area, that still had a lot of design details and artistic issues that needed to be worked out. But with those now resolved, production is proceeding at full speed on it, and we expect to have that done fairly soon. And so we should actually be able to spend quite a bit of time refining and tweaking and ensuring that the performance is at the level that we actually want before we release it to the community. In other words, the actual build out of the level is going really, really well at this point.
Very cool. And when that time comes, do you have any thoughts about how people will access it? Will it be another destination on the elevator?
That's for the short term. We're just going to cheat, and basically you're going to have the magical elevator that you can access from Area 18 or from your hangar. Obviously that will change as we get a little bit farther along, and you're gain the ability to go out in space, gain the ability to travel to different systems and stuff. But for the short term, we will just allow players to go in there, and it will just be another destination on that elevator. It's actually, Nix is really interesting from my perspective for a variety of different reasons, one of which is that it actually gives us the ability to have three completely distinct functional areas. And what I mean by that is when you first land in Nix and you come out and you go through customs and you basically go down to the main area, there's law and order, there's security, it's all well maintained, all the lights are on, there's security guards, there's civilians going about their business, there's shops in which you can do business, etc. There are hints internally that you're within an asteroid. That's you can see that from windows that give these beautiful views of the outside. You can tell because some of the ceilings, there was no point to basically building dedicated roofs and ceilings and all that type of stuff, and so you can actually see big huge chunks of still exposed asteroid stone, rock, metals, etc., just hanging throughout various areas. But in general, that area actually looks, it looks very modern. It looks very built out. It looks like what it's supposed to be, which is an area that people, did a lot of business. They actually, conducted a lot of business in that area. As you start to move, down various, corridors and passageways away from that central area, you'll start to encounter what we call, it's a more dangerous zone. Basically, it's an area that's no longer officially utilized by the political and civilian classes of this planet, and it's been overtaken by more questionable types. There's much more crime there than you would ever see in the central area of the city. There's no security to discourage it. There are obviously just some hard luck cases out there. You'll see things along stuff that's fallen into disrepair, lights that are flickering, not working, control panels that no longer operate, doors that are half stuck open, that type of thing, to where it looks very similar, conceptually to the central area, except it looks like it hasn't really been, properly maintained for a decade. Then, if you continue proceeding even farther, you'll get into what we call the excavation areas, and this is where, once upon a time, decades earlier, when this was an area that they thought was going to be a booming mining area, they were clearing out all sorts of new caverns, drilling them out, etc. And the idea was they were eventually going to put in all these control rooms and storage facilities, etc., and all of that construction stopped very quickly when they decided that, given the the surveys that they were doing, that it was going to be way more difficult to extract sufficient value to warrant all of the investment being made. And so the original inhabitants of Nyx took off, and all of the the whatever you want to say,
Construction equipment when it was left behind.
that was all left behind, and basically this more politically oriented population gradually moved in, and basically what you wound up with is a populace that tends to be a little bit more radical in their overall political beliefs versus the mainstream. And this manifests itself in a number of different ways, some of which is the fact that they're not willing to basically go and try to make a concerted effort to clean out crime in the distant areas of Nyx. They'd really rather just cordon it off and prevent it and keep it over there. So it's not their it's not their problem to solve. And so these back areas, these excavated areas, are really particularly interesting because there's no infrastructure within there at all. There are no ladders, there are no stairs, there are no lights. It's really just you're going through caverns. There's a very organic feel, fungus on the walls, dripping water, things of that sort. And one of the things I find most interesting about that is as a playground where we can put everything from wanted felons that are hiding out, the most nefarious criminals and stuff. That would be basically the zone where they operate from farthest away from the security forces and things of that sort. This is where you'd find a lot of illicit trading activity and stuff would be centered back in those areas. So there's a lot of potential on Nyx for players that don't want to necessarily adhere to the law, that are willing to.
So when Nyx ships, whenever that is, no dates, guys. What else can we expect with that?
Well, one of the other more interesting features that will come online, most likely with the same milestone as Nyx, will be the ability to route purchases to areas other than on your person. And what I mean by that is kind of like what we were talking about earlier. When I go into a shop and I find a T-shirt that I like, or I go to a souvenir shop or whatever, and I have a list of items, what do I do with it? Obviously, in the case of clothing, you can just replace the one you have. But what if you actually want to keep the clothing you have? What if you want to buy a vase, but you don't actually want to carry it around, and you don't want to take the multi-minute journey back to your ship to stow it away? And so with Nyx, we'll be incorporating features within the user interface so that when you're buying, or selling for that matter, items, you can specify as the source or destination, depending upon which one you're doing, where you want these items to go or be pulled from. And so if I purchase something, I can basically direct its delivery for a nominal surcharge back to one of my uniquely named ships, back to my hangar, or back to my Million Mile High Club, and then once I'm back there, I can decide what I actually want to do with them.
We spoke to Rob earlier today, and he mentioned there's a number of shops in Nyx. Whose names escape me at the moment. What can you tell us about our shopping opportunities in Nyx?
Nyx has a really interesting mix of shops, because not only does it have the more formal commercial shops like you might see on Area 18, the more established four walls, ceiling, floor, that type of stuff, lots of inventory, clearly a commercial vendor with a good number of goods to be sold. But it's also got what we call this bazaar area, and that's where much smaller, local merchants, or actually I wouldn't call them local merchants, I'd say they're more nomadic merchants, basically come, and sometimes they're there for a day, sometimes they're there for a week, sometimes they've got a very set amount of inventory, and that's it. And these are guys in this one central bazaar area where you can pick up a variety of odds and ends that you don't often see within the larger, more established stores.
So what kind of things can we buy in this? What was it, a bazaar?
Yeah.
Grand bazaar?
Yep. Yeah. So in the Grand Bazaar, you'd be able to buy anything from cases of liquor to seeds that you can plant. Assuming you're a farmer and interested in that type of thing. There will be all sorts of decorative items, plants that you can place. Either within your Million Mile High Club or within your hangar, things of that sort. There's going to be food for just general consumption. There's going to be a variety of souvenirs unique to that area and that they've imported from other areas that you could pick up. Just a wide variety of smaller items of much more limited quantity than what you would typically see in the larger, more established shops.
And not just things to customize your hangar or your shop, but also yourself.
That's not only that, but I'd go even farther insofar as there's actually information you can purchase that can lead to missions. There's maps that you can buy, and so really anyone that goes to Nix, you really should make the rounds through all these guys, and it will vary. It's not always going to be the same guy selling the same stuff, and see what is actually on offer and whether it's of interest to you, on that particular day, given what you're currently doing.
Wow, that's fantastic. We've taken up a lot of your time here, and thank you for it so much. Can you give us one more thing before we let you go? Beyond Nix, a quick top-level look, Hurston, the rest of the stand system, just what's down the line for the Persistent Universe?
Yeah, in general, not much has changed in regards to the overall order versus what I kind of mentioned, on the website, 2 or 3 months back, which is the next planet after Nix is going to be Hurston. That one is already, starting to move, fairly quickly. Following that will likely be Crusader and then Microtech, and that's going to complete all of the, the areas that you can visit within the Stanton system. And what this does is it basically gives us, the reason why we've adopted this approach is it gives us a lot of different areas within the same system to where we can get the balance, the balance of trade, the balance of combat, the balance of missions, all of this stuff perfected, refined, before we start to expand out to some of these other, to some of these other systems. It allows us to try to get, the formula narrowed in enough so that we minimize the amount of wasted effort as we basically start to go really, really wide with the implementation. And in addition to the landing zones, the next big thing post the Nix milestone is going to be AI. And AI, there's still going to be a very dedicated, discrete milestone to where you'll see a quantum leap in terms of advancement. But I would say that I now believe that the AI will appear in small bits and pieces prior to that, and then you'll see one big leap. We're not going to wait, as we've kind of added additional detail to some of these intermediate milestones. We don't want to hold back on all of the AI, just for this so-called dedicated AI milestone. We'd rather roll out bits and pieces, and these will be testing specific things. In particular on AI, how many NPC characters can we actually put within a map without starting to affect performance in terms of the pathfind, in terms of the collision detection, in terms of the logic, how well is the multi-threaded the AI code actually working. So there are a number of technical reasons why we want to get out even the earlier versions of this and get that working really rock solid. And then once we go with the full-blown AI milestone, that's where we would try to show not only what we can do with the system, but we would like to put 80, 90, 100 plus NPCs into a single landing zone and still have the performance be such that players on good, if not absolutely state-of-the-art machines, can still have a completely enjoyable experience. And that actually brings up one other thing, which is we've made loads of progress with regards to some of the problems that we were facing a while back, and I think that very shortly, possibly with the Million Mile High Club, we're going to wind up kicking the 25 player limit of Area 18 up to 40 players. Right now it's very close. I don't know if we'll flip that switch for the 2.0, for the 2.0 Million Mile High Club one, or whether we'll hold that back for shopping. But one of those two milestones will include a fairly significant, a 60% increase in the number of players that we're going to allow walking around in those environments. It's, on our side right now, it's looking amazingly good in terms of how much progress has been made in a relatively short period of time. We've got people, from all over, from all the different SIG studios touching different pieces of this, and it's really been amazing how quickly, some of these very large-scale technological changes have come together to allow us to basically start ramping that up. And I would expect the focus on that to just continue, so that by spring, by summer, et cetera, it's like we want to just keep iteratively, increasing the number of players and NPCs that you're going to be able to put into one single map.
It's exciting. There's no other word for it. It's really exciting. Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. Is there anything else you want fans to know before we let you go?
No, actually, the only thing I would say is just I always appreciate all the kind words and the constructive criticism that you see within the forums. I think I've read so many emails in there to where you'll see somebody stating something along the lines of, and I don't think a developer or whoever is ever going to read this and da 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 da. And I've read so many of those, and I don't usually respond, but I actually but I do read a whole lot of them.
Yes, I can attest. Chris and Tony and Aaron, they read the forums, they read the Reddit, they read everything, because then they send us stuff. I'll get an email at 2 o'clock in the morning. Chris will go, "This is a pretty good link." And I'm like, "Chris, why you're reading the forums at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're sending me links?" So yeah, no, it's fantastic. I'm certain our community appreciates it.
Yeah, I love the constant involvement of the community, and basically at times, it's funny because sometimes you're doing stuff in an intermediate fashion just because that's the way the technology comes together, and so that this is just a temporary solution, and you'll have people calling on and go, "Well, this is not going to work for this reason." It's like, and there's been so many times where just like, I agree, you just got to wait a little bit longer and we'll be getting there.
Gotcha. Well, Tony, thanks so much, and back to you guys.